I'm Dr. Andrea Dawson, and I'm the violin and viola professor at MTSU School of Music. Today we're going to be looking at this Tchaikovsky Symphony No. 4 excerpt for the 11-12 violin Midstate auditions. So I will play it first and then discuss a little bit. So obviously what they're looking for in this excerpt is that we can play with a really brilliant big sound on the E string and that we can play fast notes, and so these are the things to practice. We also have this march rhythm that needs to be quite clear and quite articulated. So the very first thing to practice is starting this excerpt, because you don't want to in the video look like you're cautious or not quite sure what you're doing. So I would actually practice with a metronome. Speaking of which, here's my metronome. I would practice starting. And to do that, I have to figure out how I'm gonna find my first note. And the F doesn't really ring very well, so I kind of get myself into fifth position, a couple of taps, right? And then I place my forefinger down. And once I feel comfortable over here, I'm going to start counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm setting my bow on 4. And I'm making sure that it's in the correct part of the string, pretty close to the bridge, that I have mostly flat hair. And then I'm starting pretty low in the bow, so I have a lot of room to make a good sound. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And we want a little bit of that pop at the beginning of this note, just to get that sense of loudness. Let me turn this off again. Then we have this big passage for 2 bars of 16th notes with lots of shifts and everything. I think you saw earlier in the video that I have a couple of suggestions for fingerings. You may have ones that work great for you, but if you don't, then you're welcome to use mine. I think that there's a lot of different ways to practice passage work. We can do dotted rhythms, which are great. Definitely recommend use your metronome if you're doing that. I want to look at another way to practice this passage, which is to start by playing 4 of every note, and then 3, and then 2, and then 1. And the advantage of this is that we start working on the bow stroke in the tempo that we're planning to play in. And so I'm trying to play this at 128. So I'm going to play every note, 4 notes at 128. It looks a little bit like this. I won't play the whole thing. So you can see I'm trying to play as forte as I can. I'm playing the correct placement of my bow. I'm playing in the right part of the bow. I'm playing with flat hair. I'm playing right with the metronome, my bow, every note very clear. But it's not as hard because I'm playing the notes 4 times slower. So once again, that's 4 notes to a beat at 128 or whatever your goal tempo is. The next thing that we want to do is we want to play 3 notes per beat. Because practicing triplets really challenges our bow and left-hand coordination, which is the purpose of this exercise. To do that, we need to change the tempo. We multiply by 4 and divide by 3, and I got about 168. It's not precise, but it works pretty well. So I have to increase my metronome to 168. My bow will be moving at the same speed, but the notes are going slightly faster. Da, 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 da. Flawless. I could do that again, right? A little bit messy and not quite with the metronome, but you get the idea. Then we're going to do 2 notes per beat, or 2 notes for every note, and then we get to go back to our original tempo of 128, and then we'll have basically 2 notes per beat. It looks like this, so it just doubles. Now the notes are moving at half tempo. So I'll do it one more time. just to make things a little harder, because in order to gain control over something, we want to do as many things to make it trickier as possible so that playing the actual thing is easier. We're going to do the same thing doubles, but starting up bow. So let's give that a try. As you can see, even have a little trouble with that, but it's a good challenge. And then once we've done that, we're probably ready, or we might have to do it a few thousand times, but then we're ready to try to play it in tempo. Oh, no, we're not apparently. Let's try that again. Ready? Right? So now, if you're like, oh, I did that and it didn't quite work, I need another practice trick. Another good one is what I call clumping, where we just play one beat in tempo and then we play the next beat in tempo. So we know that we're supposed to practice slowly, and you should definitely do that. Practice this slowly for intonation with metronome, but I'm talking about that point where you've done all the things that you know you're supposed to and you still can't get it quite up to tempo. So we're going to try clumping for just a second. Back with the metronome. I'm going to play one beat fast until I'm happy with it. Right, so in this beat, I have to think about the coordination of the bow as well as the left hand. So I'm going to really focus on that until this beat is all clean. Notice that I'm keeping my fingers prepared and pretty close to the string. Happy with that maybe? Going on to the next beat. I have to maneuver the shift in this beat. Once I feel like that's good, I go to the next beat. That one's much easier. Maybe I won't need to practice it as many times. And then so obviously we can see that some of the beats are harder than others depending on what our fingering is, and those beats we would practice more. And once we can do each of these small clumps, we make slightly bigger clumps, so maybe we'll do clumps of 2 beats. Let's try that. Oh, that's not good. Try again. And again. Then I'll start on the second beat. So I'm overlapping my clumps now. Ready? Etc. And then you can even keep increasing your clump size until you're playing a whole measure and then the whole passage. And this is useful for a lot of other passage work of similar ilk. The bowings here with the march rhythm are, you know, obviously the 16ths are what we're most concerned about, but it is worth practicing. Pick your favorite note and just do the rhythm and the bowing so that you get the coordination of it. And I would do that with the metronome as well. So I'm just going to do this on an A. Worth doing just so that that doesn't feel strange in the context of our excerpt. Then the last thing, this little 7-tuplet, septuplet going into measure 9, this pickup, it's not really hard, but we do want to practice it so that we can feel really confident about it. So I would isolate that with our metronome, of course. I like to play, I try to be in 6th position here so I don't have to shift it all during this. So I make sure I'm starting on a G. And then I'm also thinking about my finger pattern, which is half step between 2 and 3 for the whole thing. And I'm going to count 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And always count yourself in, because we want to have everything we should practice should be in the context of some kind of meter or rhythm, so that we're not getting in the habit of doing things out of rhythm. That is something that you will be judged on, is the tempo and the steadiness of your tempo. Remember that this is all about playing loudly. If you hear this symphony, it's a magnificent mass of sounds coming at you, and the idea is that each violinist is part of this mass, and so this is what we want to show is our very brightest first violin sound. So the whole time, lots of strength, good contact point. That's very important. You cannot play this excerpt close to the fingerboard or even in the middle of the string. It's got to be close to the bridge the whole time. So I hope that you will have a good time practicing this. I hope these tips are helpful, and Have an excellent audition. Hope you all make it, and love to hear from you sometime. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.